Right. How is everybody doing today? My name's Brian. I am the product manager of LaunchBox. Hello, Orion. Hopefully you've been doing well, Klutz. Uh, how is the whole bezels and overlays going, Orion? You've been doing it for a long time. Andrew, Andre, welcome in. I hope that's been doing good for you. I've always loved seeing your realistic bezels and have used them quite a bit over the years. And Klutz, welcome in. Glad to meet you and that you can join us and hopefully ask all the questions you would like to ask. We will be doing this each week. In fact, Thursdays will be my day, so you'll see my face and ask me questions if you want to come join me and hang out for a few hours. And Tuesdays will be Josh's day, and he can answer more of the technical questions and all the logic and stuff behind LaunchBox. And I know last time he streamed, he built a single sign-on service that we've been needing for a heck of a long time. And I know last week I upgraded Bannerbox, although haven't the theme, but haven't quite been able to finish that work off, unfortunately, due to a whole bunch of fun stuff that has happened over the last week since I streamed last Friday. Hopefully everybody is doing great. I am definitely looking forward. I've got this hankering to play a Sega Genesis game, like really badly. And I've been going with a whole bunch of different games recently. But I don't know. For all of you Sega Genesis fans, what would your go-to game be if you were to tell somebody that they must play these few games on the Genesis because it's either only on the Genesis or it is the superior place to play a specific game? I was thinking about playing either Rystar. I know there's a few others that people have mentioned that I've never played. I mean, I could go back to Streets of Rage. I've been kind of thinking about feeling like playing a beat 'em up kind of thing. ED, welcome in. Comic Zone. I think I've only tried that once. I really need to give that a good chance. Sonic Spinball. I don't think I've ever played Sonic Spinball. I should definitely give that a chance. Let me write some of these down because these are good suggestions. I was really a big fan of how Comic Zone looked, but I only played it for about 5 minutes when I had some time. You weren't a Genesis kid? I was both. I had the original Nintendo and loved it. I had family, I had like a rich uncle that had older kids, like 10 years older than us, and bought a whole bunch of games. My family wasn't rich, so we had we had the original game and one game, and we would rent games. We had Super Mario Brothers, which came with the system, and Duck Hunt. Played the heck out of that. And then all of a sudden, we inherited all these games. Their kids got too old, and we got I don't know, maybe 8 games out of nowhere. And just had a field day. Just random games we've never heard of. Othello, City Connection was really good. Arkanoid, we had Arkanoid. All of a sudden, Bump and Jump. All of these games that we just played the heck out of. And yeah, that was crazy going from no games to all of these games all of a sudden. We didn't have to go and rent the games from the store. But then, of course, NES era went by, and you get a little older, and Super Nintendo was the big craze, right? And we had a Nintendo. We wanted a Super Nintendo. We were really into Zelda, and Mario. Wanted to get the new Mario and wanted to get the new Zelda. Especially when that came out. I think we did get the new Zelda for Christmas or something. And then the Genesis, like if you were a kid in that era, the Genesis craze, especially in North America, was a thing. Right? Those commercials really did a number on the kids. And we wanted a Genesis so badly. And I don't remember how we did it. But I think we saved all of my money. And by we, I mean myself and my brother. And we just bought a Genesis. We wanted to play Sonic so badly. And we got it. I think we got NBA Jam on it. The Aladdin. We had the Aladdin game on both consoles. And I don't remember why. And I loved the heck out of both of them. They were both very good games, surprisingly. And we were kids, so we didn't understand the fact that most games based off of movies were not good. But these ones were good. Well, some would argue NHL 94 on the Genesis is the best version. Anybody want to counteract that or bring up a different opinion? That does sound like one. I did have an NHL game, and I feel like that's the one that I had. But I feel like I had it probably on the Super Nintendo. I could be remembering wrong. And then there was a time where we were really into Virtual Bart. I don't know if anybody remembers playing that. I don't think we ever owned it. Kept renting it a lot. And Klutz, you got Mortal Kombat because of the blood. I remember going to a friend's house. They had Mortal Kombat. Maybe it was Mortal Kombat 2. And for the sole purpose that there was blood. No, but the game didn't have blood out of the box. You had to put in that special code. And we had learnt what that code was somehow. And we went crazy. It's enough of a memory that I remember specifically going to my friend's house and doing that, but don't remember anything that happened the day before, the day after. Just that night, playing Mortal Kombat with blood. And Klutz, Aladdin was completely different, made by completely different developers. Yeah, on both consoles. I believe there's some YouTube videos that kind of explain it, and maybe like a mini documentary. It's actually quite interesting to hear how each company built the game differently and why that came to be. And both ended up being really interesting games. I mean, the Genesis Aladdin game was very Genesis. And for people that play the Genesis, you know what that means. But I would say that the Super Nintendo game was probably felt more like a game, and it was like a very good game. Very good game if you were like into side scrollers, beat 'em ups, that sort of thing at the time. Graphics looked nice. Although the Genesis one was more unique, I would say. Also a little more frustrating. So Andre, your parents weren't rich either. Your neighbors had a PS1, and you would go to their house and play the PS1. I had a cousin. I also got a PS1, but probably later in its lifespan, and had a cousin that had one before I got one, and we were playing. They had like every game. It was crazy. And so we just spent I think 3 straight days just playing PlayStation 1. Games I never heard of that I don't think I had the opportunity to play again until more recently. They had the gun for the PlayStation 1, so we played a lot of gun games, light gun games. We played a lot of we got really obsessed with a platformer called I'm going to remember the name wrong. I think it's called I think it was Pandemonium. Is that right? Do I have that? There it is. Yeah, Pandemonium, the first one. We played the heck out of this game and we wanted to beat it so badly, I remember. Oh, ED, you were out of school when PS1 was released? Everybody has that time, right? I was in high school, I think, when the PS1 came out. I remember skipping school. This is probably not the best thing to admit. I definitely skipped a bunch of school to beat Final Fantasy VII. That was definitely a thing that happened. But let me finish this list. Contra Hard Corps. Did hear there was a special Contra game and I never played it. I loved Contra. Loved it a lot. Beat the first two very many times. So, Comic Zone, Contra Hard Corps, Sonic Pinball, NHL 94 if you're in for a little NHL. Rystar on my list. And there's one other that I hear people mention all the time. That now I can't remember the name of. I'm sure I'll find out again. I think it was an exclusive. I'll figure it out. Anyway, hopefully everybody's doing well. We had an interesting week here at LaunchBox. If you guys have not used the beta, that's okay. We have just released beta 4, I believe, unless somebody wants to correct me again on my betas. Beta 4 has come out, and that has implemented our SQLite database change, which is switching the local database to an SQLite database instead of an XML file. And the story behind that is a long time ago. There was the decisions made. The way that LaunchBox works is we have our own LaunchBox database, as most of you know. And every single night, we take all of the changes that you guys make over on the database and place them into a file. That's right, Mr. Nibble. In the beginning, there was a simple XML file on the server that would get rebuilt every single night with all of your changes. The whole database, metadata, and links to media and stuff exists in that file. And probably wasn't very big at first, right? Probably when the database was created, maybe 50 megabytes. Maybe when you zipped it, it was like 4 megabytes or something. And in LaunchBox, every time you did something to do with metadata, if your file was out of date, if there was a newer version of the file that existed, we would basically download the new file for you. So you had the most up-to-date information on things like anything to do with editing or updating your metadata. So if you were editing a game, so let's say you were editing this game and you wanted to search for metadata, we would make sure that that file is the most up-to-date version. All right, and there you go. Excuse me. Same with imports. Any imports, because we use that file for imports, we use that file for related games feature later on, and a whole bunch of other things. And as the years went by, more and more games got added to the database. That file kept growing. Right, so we would take that file, we put it into memory, because memory is it's the fastest. If your file's in memory, we can import your games in like no time, and we made it so that imports take like as little time as possible before your games are essentially there and ready to hit the play button, and then you can let the media downloads go for as long as you need. And it wasn't a big footprint. 50 megs in your memory, you're not going to notice that. Then it went up to 100. Then the database grew to 200. Then the database grew to 300 megabytes. And then it grew to 400 megabytes of just the file. And we're realizing, okay, it's going to be a problem as we keep going here. As new games come out, we're going to need to do something about this. And at the time, like when you load it into memory, it actually kind of balloons in size with the caching and the more different things that we need to use it for. So, some people noticed that, like, to open up their task manager, that LaunchBox all of a sudden is using a lot of memory without us doing anything. All because of that file. But that file's kind of needed and useful, and especially in memory, it's super fast. And it's kind of embedded in the program at this sort of low level. Very hard to change. So we made the decision, let's solve this problem. And so that problem is now what you see in Beta 4. That solution is now in Beta 4. It's called us switching to the SQLite era, I guess. So we put it in an actual database file instead of an XML file, which is just essentially just a formatted text file. So it's in a database, and went through the work to essentially switch everything over inside of LaunchBox, and I use this database file for everything that we use it for. The database file, in essence, is fast, much faster than just looking at an XML file, and we got all the new nice database things that you can do with it to make things even faster. So we did as much work as we could on it, and Beta 4 shows all of that work and effort, which was mostly done by our great and talented developer Cbeats. If you ever see him on the forums, you can thank him for that. And from now on, I think in our tests, memory usage went from maybe, 1700, 1800 upon open, down to 400, 500, something like that. Depending on how big your library is, how much media that you have and you're scrolling through, that sort of thing. And so it's a huge drop down and accomplishment. It also makes your startup much faster. So your startup, because we needed that file, we needed to load that into memory during startup, which also, the larger that file is, the longer that startup process takes. And so it was only going to get slower. And now we don't have to do that anymore. So just remove that would probably affect how long your LaunchBox opens, depending on your situation. To be honest, you could make LaunchBox not have to load that during startup. So that's so if you had that going on, you just didn't get any benefits anyway, other than all the other ones that I mentioned. Ooh, and Klutz, what if we split up the database by default platforms and only download the platforms that you need? That was definitely a conversation that we had. We do this already on the Android app, actually. So we have the framework for that. But those are still XML files, and it doesn't really solve the problem. It just splits the problem up, buys us some time. And so this solution that we have, basically solves the problem. You don't even have to do it anymore. And then we did talk about, well, what if we split up these files into platforms, like you're saying? We have 180 something platforms that we support, so there'd be 180 something database files, which probably not surprising, would take longer to parse than one giant database file. And so the way that the database file is utilized inside of LaunchBox, it is much more beneficial to have one giant file than 180 something small ones. It would definitely degrade performance with a number of features and things that you'd need to use. I think it might marginally speed up other features. So there's some benefits, and that's why we talked about it, but chose against it for now. If that makes sense. And ED, you've been using LaunchBox since version 5 and 6. Yeah, Jason was doing live dev streams. I was watching those live dev streams back then. And isn't it crazy how far we've come? Yeah. Lots of us now. A whole handful. Yeah, I mean, you're on the right track, Klutz. When the Android app came out, we had that same problem, and the solution was that. Split it up into platforms, which has its pros, for lower-end systems on Android. It will function better, but has its cons as well. And so on Android, we still have some issues surrounding that. And it makes it so you can't really include some features that you might want to, just because the database isn't actually there. That just seems weird, Mr. Nibble. So you say SQL, which does make sense. And then you say IT. You say it really fast? Oh, SQL. SQL, so you say it's SQL. You know, this was really funny, because, what is it, SQL or SQL? How did the original person intend to say it? And when I was in college, I had a teacher that brought up that same subject. He's it's if you don't know how to say it, it doesn't really matter. But he talked to the original guy that created SQL, created SQL, and he called it SQL. His original intention was that it was just to be called SQL. And something like that. And I don't know, that just stuck with me. Yeah, klutz. You never know. You never know. I used to play a game called EverQuest. In that game, there was this really popular buff that you would cast on people to make you run faster. Right? Everybody wanted to run faster, and the spell was called Spirit of the Wolf, and we condensed it down to SOW. And so we went maybe like 10 years. We probably didn't play that long. Maybe like 8 years saying, shortening it to SOW. So everyone would say SOW, SOW. But apparently, there's a huge portion of the population that said it so, like SEW. And so most people say, we didn't know this, most people were calling it so, like here, can you cast so on me? And as soon as we heard that later in our playing life of EverQuest, that just threw me back. Like, that people could even call it like that. But it is what it is. People have whatever accent they want to have. Whatever accent they do have. And so I just go whatever the original guy wanted to call it, SQL. Although who knows, like when they took it and they made this SQL, this light version, yeah, it probably made more sense to call it SQLite. Oh man. All right. Well, anyway, that's out. We've been working on that. The last week we also worked on Android. I know our Android dev somewhere there. He was sick last week, so we couldn't really do much. But what we did do was we already have Beta 2 out, I believe, and that solved a whole lot of problems and made that network attached storage solution that we put in there work really well. Really like the way that it works now. People are saying good things about it, that they're talking, that are using it and testing it for us. But to me, it kind of completes the cycle of, if you wanted a device, like an Android device, to not have all of your games on it, but you have like a computer that's on all the time that you can share a folder, or you actually have a NAS somewhere in your house, a server or something, and you have your games on that, you can just import your games from that NAS onto this device. You could tell which ones are on the device or not on the device. You can download the games onto the device for offline play, delete those games when you're done with them, and really just have more of like a dummy player in LaunchBox or Android that doesn't need to have all of your games like on an SD card or something like that. I really like that concept. I don't know if any of you guys have tried it or ever think about something like that, because that would be an interesting experiment. Like on Windows, you have that capability already, right? So people, I hear a lot of people, they have their games on another computer or on some sort of server, and they share it with their house, and then on LaunchBox, they just point to that server. There's like, well, import all these games, right? And all these games are on a server. Because it's a Windows device, it is super fast to just play those games directly from that server. Right? Don't even need to download it. It can load it through the server on Windows. But there's something to be said if you're a big handheld guy. So if you have a handheld Windows device, I kind of wonder, and hey, thanks for the follow, Survivor. If you had a Windows handheld device, like if you were Astro Bob with his little Legion Go, and you also had a desktop, and you had all of your games on your desktop, but you wanted to bring your Legion Go somewhere, off of your LAN, you could click a button on that game and just be like, download this game, like locally, and then just have LaunchBox just do it, and then you're off to the races. I kind of wonder how many people are in that scenario. If I had to guess, probably not that many. More people are probably in the scenario of like having a phone or an Android device, handheld, that where you didn't want to duplicate all of your games. But I could be wrong. Anyway, where was I? Android. We are kind of like doing whack-a-mole. If people were following the development, we just went from Xamarin Forms to Maui, which is a new framework that Microsoft is touting as the next big thing. And so LaunchBox for Android runs on Maui right now. And we're kind of doing a little bit of cleanup where we're fixing things here and there that got missed through Maui. And we're at a point with Beta 2 where it's basically like so close to ready. And on top of that, we added sort of like the completion of our NAS support. So a lot of quality of life things that we added to this, and listening to feedback from the users and getting it to a point where everybody's happy with that. Excuse me. And so we're very close. There's like one or two more things that I know we're working on. And as we solve one thing, it makes something else not work properly. It's kind of like a little bit of whack-a-mole. And we're kind of at the point where it's like, okay, the app is working, the videos are running the way that we want, but in this state or the other state, not quite doing the thing that we want it to do. And so we're getting through that. We should have a beta probably tomorrow with the remaining changes. And if all goes well with both of those products, with both Windows and Android, we should have official releases sometime next week, crossing our fingers. As long as nobody tells us some major problem with either of the apps right now. On top of that, this is something I was not expecting, but think of this thought process. We upgraded Windows. So if you look at the changelog to Windows right now, a lot of it was like performance change. We did a .NET 9 upgrade from .NET 6, just a framework update. We did this SQLite change. We changed the game details panel here to try to make it more performant by changing it to refresh the bindings on the page instead of having to replace the entire panel itself. And then all of a sudden reports are coming in that Big Box is broken. Like, that's interesting. We didn't touch Big Box in any of what I just said. Like, I don't know, I'm using attract mode, and over time, like under a day, LaunchBox will hang. Like, that's new. And the history there is like last year I spent like a good maybe 5 months where I just had Big Box running on continuous cycle, trying to deduce any problems that we might have, because I was tired of people saying that we had problems with Big Box. Just like this, I don't know if you guys see it. We've got, I don't even know if you could see it, to be honest. You can't see it. That's weird. So here's my thing. There. Just Big Box running in a loop, monitoring all of the stuff on it. Just for days, for months, 5 months. Knocking off every problem that we had. And we had come to the realization that, because people were saying, well, you got like memory leaks, like after a specific amount of time, there's a memory leak. Well, we proved that wrong. There was no memory leaks in LaunchBox in Big Box, but there was a problem, and we couldn't quite figure out what that was for a very long time. And it turned out there's this thing in .NET called the Atom table, which nobody had ever heard of. And it's a table, I guess, like that's filling up its rows every time an image or something is loaded into it. And apparently there's a max amount of rows that can go into this table, and then after that table fills up, the app doesn't crash per se, but it feels like the performance has degraded to almost nothing. Like the controls are delayed by like 5 seconds. You're like moving it and things are stuttering. And like once we landed on that, we realized, okay, there's this table that we really, to be honest, with .NET shouldn't really be touching, because .NET is supposed to take care of this kind of stuff for you. It's not clearing. So what happens if we just clear it every once in a while? And that solved the problem. And then from there, I did like a number of tests where I could just run Big Box for a month. No problem. I'm hoping I'm saying this all right, because big props to Seabeats, our developer, to find all of this stuff out. And since then, no problems. So when all of a sudden people are saying, well, attract mode is hanging, and then I'm remembering all those battle scars of like 5 straight months of making sure that Big Box is running fine. And it turns out that .NET 9, the upgrade, somehow negatively affected our VLC integration in some way that made it so videos would hang Big Box within like 5 hours of use if you were on a heavy attract mode setting. So you'd have to be on attract mode, you'd have to be running it 24/7, and all the settings for attract mode would have to be on its fastest point. So it would be like changing games every 5 seconds and moving, spinning in the games, like, and landing on the next one really fast. And so I did that, and in my test, it was hanging Big Box within 1 to 5 hours or something like that, which I found very strange. And then, of course, we hear back, well, Windows Media Player isn't crashing at all, which again was very strange, because in our test, Windows Media Player had a systemic memory leak issue. If you were using Windows Media Player, it felt a bit lighter to use in short-term bursts. But there was a time when using attract mode with all the settings that I just mentioned where it just spasms out and then hits your max memory really quickly and then crashes. And that's what we found within those 5 months of playing, whereas VLC had no problems. Of course, there's also the issues with where Windows Media Player has less codecs, so your selection of files that it would actually play properly is less. Not a huge problem if you stay within the confines of certain video formats, but VLC does have more compatibility there. But like the narrative kind of switched all of a sudden with .NET 9. Hey, Windows Media Player, all of a sudden, because we had tested Windows Media Player in .NET Core 3.1, .NET 6 when we updated, didn't solve any of that problem. Might have even made it worse. And just gave up hope that Microsoft would actually solve the memory leak that it had. And then all of a sudden, .NET 9 comes around and it's like, well, we solved Windows Media Player. No more memory leak. And so we're still testing that, but signs are that there's no more memory leak in Windows Media Player, which is amazing, in attract mode in that setting. And then we upgraded VLC to the latest stable release, and that removed the hanging issue for videos. And so we're basically at a point where big box video engines are doing very well, lasting for, I mean, we only had like 5 days to test this, but when that happened, it has not crashed once on either video engine. So even though this update has nothing to do with big box, and we didn't touch the code in big box, we solved potential, like the video playback in big box is as good as it's ever been. I'm just reading your message, Mr. Nibble. So he wants us to pronounce it SQLite. There you go. So I was pretty close. That's pretty funny. Anyway. Scarmy, you're going to refuse. Hey, as long as you understand when people say SQLite, then I think we're okay. Anyway, so we're on track. And of course, now that you're here, Scarmy, we have the game's database changes coming soon, which I think I mentioned last week. You're gonna play dumb, even though you know what they're saying. I had mentioned last week that we had some changes coming to the game's database, like on the actual website, and we were changing sort of like the visual frameworks that we're using, getting something more modern, taking feedback, a lot of feedback that we had when we released the current iteration from moderators and people that love to edit the database. And we're getting it to a point where the framework will kind of be better to work with. And so we're at the point where we're almost ready with this game page. The game page is going to look like this versus, I guess, like this. It'll have a small visual change. But the main thing that you'll notice is that both the media and the metadata information is more condensed. You can fit more on one screen. You can, which is better for people that are editing the games. The media is on the same page instead of a separate page, so you don't have to load a separate. It's not 2 clicks to get to the images, it's just one. And then we have like a little button that you can press that'll bring you down. This little menu will then allow us to further expand the database in different ways without feeling like we're really causing too much bloat on the pages. So it gives us that functionality. Moderators will see that all the images are now labeled and categorized properly instead of it being more of a stylistic thing where it was just like all together here, which was very similar. This is the way that it very similarly looked on our previous page as well. So you're not able, even though maybe it looks a bit better, you're not able to really tell what all the images might be. And now we've solved that. Everything is in its own section. And we've created a consolidated edit window that could be used for everything. No separate edit windows for all the little things. So it could be used for game information and media. And we also have the ability to lock fields, which we are very excited to bulk use when we can to get the database in order. From there, we definitely want to expand the database in a number of ways. And we talked about it last week with a few of you guys that came to the stream on different ways that we can expand the database. I don't know if any of you guys that weren't around last week, you had any suggestions on how we should expand the database. But I want to start off small so that we don't overwhelm anybody that might be learning the database. Just add a new survivor, just add a new genre type and call it shoot 'em up. There's a few thoughts to that. Or would you rather have the ability to have sub-genres? Where it's like shooter, and then under that there's like a shoot 'em up type of category and like a bunch of others. One thing that could go haywire here, and let me know if this is a good trade-off. Let's say we do either, and we add a whole bunch of genres. Everybody's going to have their own genre. Like we open the floodgates. Hey, we're adding new genres. Let us know what makes sense to you. Like prove, justify your case, right? And so we go out and, your thing is we need a shoot 'em up genre. And somebody else might come down and be like, well, we need all these genres. And we get a list. And the list is whatever, like 20 genres. The trade-off then is that any theme created up to this point, let's say big box theme, that uses images to represent a genre, instantly break. So that's one trade-off. So far, are we okay with that trade-off? %. I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. We got to do something. We just have to be okay with the fallout. And there's many solutions. Like we can just add them ad hoc. We're going to do this. Or add a secondary category. Or turn a bunch of this stuff into tags. And just have like a whole bunch of tags that people can add to give even more granularity for a game. To get really deep into this thing. We can inherit Steam's system, and like they've got whatever 400 and something tags that you can go on and apply stuff to. You do all that stuff. We can make a decision, and so we lay it all out no matter what that decision is. And now look at the positives. More granularity, better filtering, better when you go to genres. I mean, it would kind of be unwieldy, but we have the ability, and I'm looking that I don't have MAME installed on this, but, or do I? I do not. Oh yeah, I uninstalled everything and installed everything. But you would have the ability to have sub-genres. I think we already support that. We already support subgenres in this filter menu, and so that's not a problem. But we would instantly break every big box theme that uses genres for images. So it's just something we would have to keep in mind when we're answering support tickets, when we're seeing people on forums. We might start getting a little bit of a reputation that our genre system is broken in big box. That will become like sort of like a perception that people will get in certain circles. And if you want to see what that would feel like, looks like C-Beats got you covered. Yeah, so C-Beats has a post that has a lot of games already categorized into subgenres that you could use a plugin created by Joe Viking to import into your library, which then it would then be a reality that your games would be then more categorized better through genres. And I did use that plugin, and I did fill one of my builds with it to get a sense of how that would impact LaunchBox. And it impacts it. There's not a lot of positives, actually. Instant ones, too. The related games feature becomes a lot more accurate, because there's more information in genre that the system already is trying to use, and then is able to weigh better. And Survivor, so you would argue that it would break the themes, and you're okay because genres themselves are so antiquated and really need a refresh. And I would lean to your side. And we've talked heavily about what that solution would be. Instead of just like, let's do this, let's just ad hoc make these couple things, add them, which we actually have done. We added the pinball genre and I believe at least one other one. And we kind of saw the trickle effect of that a little bit. The Android app is going to get hit maybe the most. And we might have to change the way that the Android app works, but I believe the way that it works is every genre is represented by a banner. But I mean, if you have 100 different genres, or like things that could be a genre, that's a lot of banners. So that may need to be switched to text. Yeah. There definitely needs to be something done. And I want to go even further. I don't want to just add a genre. I'm probably in the camp of we need much more granularity to be able to allow users to tag these games much better. And so, I mean, but that's a huge change. And so I want to do that. And that starts with the games database, right? So that's true. We got to start that. Probably start with something smaller so that we don't scare the developers away. And do something like alternate release dates. Something like that. Right now, a game can only have one release date, but a game was released at different points in time throughout its history when for different regions. So we could have regionalized release dates. In the same vein as alternate names. But I like your idea. And nobody else had any ideas, so maybe we'll write that one down here. Survivor in favor of genre expansion. Heard a lot of things in the past, like instead of just having ESRB ratings, why don't you have all of the other rating systems in the world? And usually when people say that, it's because they're from another region, and what they really want is their region's rating system. I say that because I looked up how many rating systems there are in the world. There is a lot of them. And we could fill up our database just with different game rating systems. And that would probably overwhelm the amount of users. But if we really broke it down, it probably makes sense to use maybe the top 3 or something like that. We got ESRB, we've got PEGI, and I know Japan has their own that we could probably use. But there's so many others. And what I realized is that there's a problem with all of them. All of these rating systems, ESRB and everything, there's a problem. And that's because there is no one rating system that covers every game. And so if we're going to stick to a rule of like, hey, if ESRB didn't rate this game, we can't set a rating for this game, then that makes it so that all of those games can't be filtered by rating in LaunchBox or in Big Box or wherever, or using the related games feature or any of that stuff. We can't safely say, if, show me all the games that are rated for everybody. Because a lot of games weren't rated by the ESRB or PEGI or whatever. Like, a lot of games came out before that happened. So how do you solve that problem? I mean, other than having to create our own rating system. Did somebody solve this problem already? I would love to hear that. Has somebody rated every single game in the whole world that was ever released under the exact same rating system? I would love to know what that rating system's like. So then we could safely say that if I say I want to see all the games in my library, that is for a mature audience, I would actually get all those games. It's funny because I don't think movies have the same problem. I'm pretty sure they have a rating system that they probably have attached onto every movie ever existed. In one way, shape, or form. There's other things that we talked about last week, like doing like a character database where you can look up Sonic or somebody would show up and when you search for a specific game, like Sonic 1, and you can click Sonic, and almost like a cast credits of some kind. And then you can see a list of all the games that that character was in. And last week, people did not like that idea that much. I surprisingly like the idea of having more like credits of people that worked on that game. And I don't know if there's anything like that. That'd be a tough list to do, especially on more recent games over the last 20 years. Because that list would be long. Always something to think about. Lots of directions that we can go just with database expansion and that sort of thing. We talked about putting all that controls information that we have inside of LaunchBox itself that drives the controller support badge. We could dump that into the database. We talked heavily about the idea of having a controls-based database where LaunchBox could know about the different controls that a game uses and what those controls are. Like, what does the A button do in this game? What does the X button do in this game? That would be a big undertaking. And then we talked about all of the cons in the system like that and how crazy that would end up getting. Who knows? And other things that we talked about that are actually getting really close to being done is we talked about the retirement of our Bitbucket and the fact that we're going to end up using a new service called FeatureBase. And we're very, very close to launching that. All of the pieces are basically in place. We're just doing some polish up on the different boards. People will be able to access it through the app, through all of our websites, whether it's the main website or the forums, places like that. So if you ever decided to open up a ticket, either reporting a bug or providing us feedback on a feature that you want to see, you will get directed here. You'll be able to view all the posts or go into a specific board. So if you're wanting to just make a request for LaunchBox for Windows or Android or something, create a new post, pick your board, LaunchBox for Android. You get a little description of information that would be helpful to include, and then we have a whole bunch of secondary things that happen after you make the post that would allow us to hear about it and provide context to it. Others can provide information to it, vote on it, all that great stuff. You tried to log in there last week and it's working? Yeah, it's completely live. If you go there right now, I believe the website that we're going to use, feedback.launchbox.gg. There it is essentially what the website is. We'll have some different URLs that'll go to specific boards. The only thing that's not set in stone yet is, so if you're making a feature request, we're going to add what I guess they're calling custom fields that will allow you to better categorize your feature. And that would then allow us to better filter, or allow users to better filter by that custom field. You can see here where we're testing it here. Affected product. And that we're still in the process. Once that's done, because those are board specific values, or I guess fields that we can use for that, so that you can better tell us what this feature is about. And once that's done, we should be able, this will basically soft launch, go live. We'll be able to, you'll just see it. But yeah, if you want to get there early, you can right now at feedback.launchbox.gg. I believe the single sign-on service is working as far as we're able to deduce. And you can go there and vote for your thing. See, here's, you can vote for it, and then it asks you, well, how important is this feature for you? Is it a nice to have, important, or an essential feature? And so we'll have that soft launching really, really well. And the SSO worked for you too? Good. Because when we initially built it, it was actually broken, and we didn't know if it was us that implemented it incorrectly, or if their API that they give us, the feature base, because this was broken. Turns out that their stuff was broken. We let them know and they fixed it. So once that happened, single sign-on was actually working. So good that it was working on your end. So this is basically ready to go. I can't see it taking longer than a soft launch of just, again, early next week. A few more things, and then everything will just all of a sudden point to there. And then we can start discussing any of the features that come through here. So if you have one and you want to get ahead of the game, Andrew, go ahead and test it out. You might have to edit your post later if we end up adding some custom stuff. So that's in the works as well. What else are we doing? Well, I am still not 100% under the weather that I was last week. Still have a cough. So forgive me for coughing. And I had quite the weekend where didn't quite go as planned. And so this week hasn't been everything that we ever wanted, but we're getting through it. The one thing that I wanted to do today is show off a little bit about our development process, and I can only show off my side of things. So let me set the stage here of basically Seabeats. I know you're around somewhere. Don't see you here in my room, but I know you're there somewhere. And there is some changes that went through. We have the binding refresh change for this game's details page. All right, and that's been in place since I think beta 1. Could be wrong there. And if you see, maybe beta 2, I don't know. It's refreshing all the stuff in there, just binding at a time, instead of refreshing the whole panel. But that means that we had to touch every single element in there to make it work this way. And so we did that. We made it so like this star rating element is doing it, all these titles and texts and listing. This isn't even the default theme. I'm on my featherweight theme because I was testing that before the stream. See you later, Scarmy. And basically went through it all. But recently we realized that we have a lot of really old themes that have old elements that we no longer use anymore. But they're still there, and some people still use it in their custom themes, or you might want to use a very old theme that might still include that. And this included things like we used to do this star rating completely differently than the way we did it now. It used to be just like text, and it was kind of janky the way that it worked. I don't know if you guys remember, where as you're mousing over it, it just seemed very non-performant for some reason. It's like a weird thing to say for just star rating. But it worked. But it didn't use the same element, so that was still broken because we weren't thinking of that. People were still using the theme from like 7 years ago. Well, I guess you'll find out if you're not on the beta. I hear that it is better for people. Depends on your machine. It's not the only thing that we changed, so there might be other things that you'll enjoy as well. I'm pretty sure you could actually improve that situation yourself through some setting changes. But I'm assuming this is not what's happening for you when you click on a game and you see it update like that. Anyway, so there was the star rating element. There was a really old video element that was having problems. And that's been fixed, but I haven't had time to test it. So this is kind of the way that I go about testing this stuff. Let's take a look. Open up this client, and I can see that there's a lot of changes waiting in this branch for me to test. Hey, ED, yeah. Definitely don't upgrade to the beta if you're not wanting to test the beta. I know some people do, and it's fine if you do. If you do that and something's broken, we just request that you don't tell us that it's broken in the regular channels, that you come to the beta thread and you participate, because that's where we are. We're there trying to deduce all of the beta related problems there, and other people are somewhere else going into like the bug fixes areas and places like Bitbucket and stuff, trying to deduce that stuff, which is a sort of a separate release channel. All right, so you can see here there was a null ref fix. There was making crusty legacy controls work with the game details changes. To me, this basically means the star rating and that video control. And so I need to see if I can get this up for you guys. This one? Yeah, it's this one. Okay, so I got Visual Studio here open. It's automatically picked up the changes. And I'm going to build the project. And let's test. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, how risky were these changes? I mean, I just laid out the two things that were broken were the star rating, the old star rating element, the old video control. But sometimes you go and fix those and you end up breaking something else not related to this. And so if you're just a QA tester and you're like, well, these are the things that they solved, I'm going to test star rating, and I'm going to this old star rating control, and I'm going to test this old video control. I'm going to make sure that they work. I'm going to make sure they work in different ways. Maybe I'm going to turn on auto video play, that option, and see if it's playing the video automatically. I'm going to turn off the auto video playback, and I'm going to make sure that I can click on it. I'm going to make sure that I can double click on it and do full screen mode. I'm going to make sure that I can turn the feature off, maybe make sure that still works, all that stuff. And then I'm going to do the same thing with star rating. But what if the changes ended up breaking something that weren't either of those features? And so, man, testing can be tough sometimes. And as you well know, Focusborg, welcome in. ED, is there a feature that LB doesn't have, LaunchBox doesn't have, that I would like to see? There are so many features that I would want to see. How about you, Focusborg? Yeah. You have ideas. Shoot them out. Everybody, shoot out your ideas and answer ED's question. And then I'll answer it after, as I test these features. Now, this theme doesn't have either of the things that I need. So I am going to switch little air zonk. This new video control is still working. This new star rating control still working. We can full screen. Nope, I clicked on that. View full screen button. The context menu. Ooh, there you go. Hot one. Probably one that no one would ever see. But, I mean, you can obviously see that it's something to do with the SQLite. I'm going to say it, SQLite thing there. All right, here we go. Focusborg. Scan all your magazines. You got a lot of magazines. I'm assuming. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. There was some SQLite. I don't think I could say it that way. Changes. So that's what that error was. That makes sense. All right. So I'm going to switch over to a theme that actually uses those elements, and the only one that I know uses both is this old default, at least one that I don't have to go to the forums to download. All right, back to your request. Feature idea: magazine PDFs create links to all of the game ROMs that were written about said magazine. How about this idea, Focusborg? I don't know if we could do that. So we can't. Does this make any sense? Although this would be a lot of work. But where the database has a database of magazines, not the actual magazine, right? They're copyright, but like a list that says this magazine was a thing, maybe like the cover, and then a list of all the articles that were in it, which games are associated with that magazine. And so when you bring it into LaunchBox and you like pick a magazine or you pick a game, the game would then list the magazines that the game was in. And vice versa, you pick a magazine and that would show you a list of all of the games in your library that I mean, it seems like a lot of work for that. But, I mean, if you could do anything, would people use that? And ED, the only one you've been wanting is just an easier way to add additional manuals, guides, and maps for games. Right. And in the way that you would think of an easier way of doing that, what is easier for you versus the additional apps? I'd love to hear that. You're saying easier way to link them to the games. That's what it sounds like, but not new features that utilize those additional documents. At Focusborg, that's an old request there. You want, and correct me if I'm wrong here. We have the ability to launch with certain emulators a specific game. But what you actually want is, do I even have a game that does this in this build? To play a version that then lets you choose, have a third level that then lets you choose which emulator to use, which then would have a fourth level if you were using RetroArch. Yeah, we've tested that this actually works at the same time. All right, video control. Can I double click it? I can, and it does this weird opens VLC thing. All right, bye. All right, and that would be enough for you, Focusborg. Just extending this right-click menu to include more things. Now, counterpoint. People might not like the fact that they now need to go 3 to 4 menus deep to play a game that they used to only have to go 2 menus deep. Man, you're going crazy. 4 Super Nintendo emulators. Yeah, would you, Dr. Phobos, a GUI alternative to this right click? Or Focusborg, are you like, that's how you do it? You right click your game and you go this way. This is what you want. So if we added something over here that allowed you to pick the game or something, or added an extra step before launching a game in some other way, it would be useful, or would it just be like not natural the way that you're using LaunchBox? Oh, there, Joe Bike. See, we're gonna create a feature that goes all like, makes these menus like go out, go out, go out, forcing Joe to buy an ultra wide monitor. So if we created Focusborg like an extra button that appears on the game's details page that would then give you that capability, would you use that button? Okay. You're not like one of those people that have the game details just hidden away and you need to have it here on this context menu. And I haven't forgotten about you, Edie. You're saying that the easier way for you is that you already have these named, I'm guessing, after the name of the game file? Okay, so as far as I'm aware, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, manuals. So you could copy and paste your manuals into the manuals folder. I wish I had an example of this. Okay, so we've got LaunchBox manuals. And if you went into one of these, all right, so I do have 2. And if that manual was named after the file name, I feel like LaunchBox would just pick it up automatically. So you just like paste them here. That's what I'm thinking would happen. Actually, we can test that. Or maybe you can confirm that. Now, what you want is for us to say, I mean, there's not really another manual per se, but let's say we created something called documents. And in there, we create something called, you have your platform folders. Nintendo Entertainment System. And then in there, you have something called maps. And in there, you have all of your maps, and they're all formatted so that they are named after your ROM file. But then you can only have one map that's linked to there. I feel like we would have to create our own naming convention for this to be automatic. Would have to be something like who does anybody have stuff like this? You know, name of game dot pn map 1 that wouldn't work. You would, because you have set up, because I don't remember what Rocket Launcher did. They must have created their own system naming standard, I'm guessing. And then you just followed that naming standard and you named all of your stuff already. You did all that hard work. And now you got all these files that are named after very specifically Rocket Launcher's naming standard, and you want LaunchBox to ingest them. Am I okay, so it named thing. How about the files themselves? It's like, how did they get that link? What was the link between the file and the game? Like in this system, let's say, I don't know if they had something similar to this, but it'd be like the platform maps. So the map, we know that everything in here is a map. Or instead of maps, it could just be the name of the game. But Dr. DePhobos, okay, so here we go. Edie, guides, platform, game name. So they did do game name, so that's how they link it to the game. Okay, so that makes sense. So the way that they link it is through a folder with the game's name. So far, so good. So they get that link through this folder. You go in there, and you just do whatever you want in here, and they just maps or whatever that you want, and then doesn't matter what this is called, map 1 at this point, because we already have established the name. The important bit is this part right here is we've linked the platform, we've linked the game through the folder. Interesting. And so that's the when I say like, okay, Rocket Launcher created their own standard that someone had to create. Like, you had to sit there and do this at some point in your life. Maybe it helped you out by creating these folders for you. And then you have to like give each subfolder, you like create it, give it a name, put your stuff in there. Like, you have to do that work. And people did the work, I'm assuming. Yeah, so at this point, their naming convention, when I say naming, was platform folder, name of game folder, dump all of the stuff in there. And we'll read your folders, and we'll read your files, and we'll present that to you in this area, this pause screen. So all of the manual work, which in LaunchBox happens inside of the UI, is now happening in File Explorer. And of course, like, good, so you confirmed. They created this crazy amount of folders for you. And so your job would be like to navigate through them. You would have, like, in my case here, 768 folders with nothing in them. And I would go one at a time. Okay, go into folder 1. Here are all the things that I've collected. Drag and drop, dump. Go into the next folder. Drag and drop, dump. And if I wanted to go the extra mile, instead of drag and drop, dump, I would create like some sort of hierarchy for myself, maps, guides, whatever I want to call it. And Rocket Launcher would pick that up. And I would dump in here, do that for this game, then do that for 768 more games, and I'd be done. So, am I right? And that you did that work. Okay, so something like that. And like, you just don't want to do that work again, which makes sense. I wouldn't want to do that work again. You already did it. And you want LaunchBox to be able to read that work that you did and ingest it into LaunchBox to have it just work. Does that make sense? Almost like additional documents or a document migration tool or something. If you could just be like, point to my folder. Here's my Rocket Launcher folder. Migrate. One button. And then in like under 5 minutes, it would all be just working inside of LaunchBox. Would that be a tool that would help you, make sense for you? Yeah, the one thing that we don't currently have is the organizational navigation that something like this system would give you, like these extra steps. So if you took the time to say, okay, I've got 5 guides and I'm making this folder called guides and everything's in there, and then I go into maps and I've got like 6 maps and I put them in here for this game, and then in LaunchBox to be able to just read in, let's say, the pause menu, like, oh, there's a map section, you click on that and there's like a secondary menu with the maps. We don't have that. Well, I could see that's being a really, really cool plugin idea, right? Like a rocket launcher document migration tool, where all you really do is go point to your rocket launcher documents folder, like wherever it is, and then you click the migrate button, and then, you know, under 5 minutes later, you're done. And then you move on. So for users that are in the predicament that you have, you know, they could go. And this is what our tool, or this is what our plugin section we wanted to use it for eventually, was some kind of Viking could create my rocket launcher migration document tool, and you could go into your plugins and there'd be like, oh, there's a rocket launcher migration tool, and you click on it and then you would just install it. It would add a new menu that basically does that. Click on rocket launcher, point it to the folder, answer whatever questions that the plugin might have, and it does the work for you. Now, I do agree that, so we would like to keep, let's say you wanted to add a new thing. You had a new thing that you wanted to add into a new document that you want to add into a game after you cleaned up your like hundreds or thousands of documents. Calling it the additional apps is probably not a smart move. We probably need it as another section called like additional documents or just documents. And you could just assign all of your documents on there. But it sounds like what you really want is to not do it within an interface. You want to do it within File Explorer, the old-fashioned ways. Well, think about it. They game name, or maybe that's file name. That'd be a tough one to do, although we would create that ourselves, so maybe not. Cool. And Break Zoras, thanks for stopping by. You're wanting more integration with LaunchBox and retro achievements. Okay, so more integration of retro achievements. And then you say better API maybe. What does that mean? You want retro achievements to create a better API that we can utilize? Or let's get rid of APIs and technicalities. Forget about what is currently possible. And you could do anything. You could take anything from retro achievements. What would you want? Because retro achievements does a whole lot of things that a very small portion of the community utilizes. And some of those features might be really cool inside of LaunchBox. And so I'm curious which ones of those you would love to see. What is your dream retro achievement integration piece? Joe Viking. File management open manuals folder. Yeah, but I understand. You guys the one thing about this is we've gotten a lot of slack for some reason about creating folders that are there for people to utilize, but aren't there. You're not supposed to look at these folders. Like for images and for the games folder, we create folders. They're there as a navigational piece for you guys to use to drop in games or drop in your images. And people do not like that. So in this scenario, we would be creating... Alright, I should probably close that. We would be creating a tens, if not hundreds of thousands of empty folders. You just told us to create all these folders for this feature. And break Zora's. Hopefully you're typing out all that dream retro achievement stuff. There it is. The search. So LaunchBox's search could add some filters for retro achievements, for example. Oh, so you're talking about filters there. Games that are easy to master, showing newly added achievements, for I'm assuming games in a user's library. There'd be, you're talking about like an activity feed of achievements that were newly added to the system, or an activity feed of newly achieved achievements. So an activity feed is in LaunchBox for achievements that you have recently achieved. But I don't even know if they have the ability to tell which achievements were recently added. Do they have that capability on their website? That's be interesting to see. Focusborg, your dream integration are speedrunning stuff. Do they do running? I know they have leaderboards, and some of those leaderboards might be how fast you do something in a specific game. But those leaderboards are like, see, MAME leaderboards, if you use those, are straightforward, right? A game has a high score board, you achieve those high scores. Retro achievements leaderboards are trying to inject leaderboards into games that never had them. So a game might have 5 leaderboards that all do something different, like level 1, how fast you can beat this one, that level of this one game. You can get on that leaderboard. Maybe there's like a mini game inside of a game that they decide to do a leaderboard just for that portion of that game. And so each game could potentially have many leaderboards. And as you're playing the game, you like start seeing things happen in the bottom corner of the screen, and you're like, oh, what's going on there? Why are numbers appearing, or why is this happening? And you're just like playing, and then you might happen to land on a leaderboard if you do very well to the thing you didn't realize you were doing. But back to, if you click on your retro score, it opens a slow loading window that tries to fetch your information and shows your recent activity for the games that you played over the last such and such. So there's that. We also have that in Big Box as well. But there's a lot of things. So as many might know, Astrobob, or Andrew, he's a huge retro achievement fanatic. Loves them a lot. And so we went through, we had a number of discussions about retro achievements and went through like all of the things that retro achievements do and that we could utilize. And we made a giant list and broke that down, and I developed a plan of action for when we have time, what we could do for retro achievements to get like some sort of retro achievement overhaul. And so before we get to your other request, Focusborg, let me share this with you. It's here somewhere. I'm probably going to go to the wrong place here. Here we go. All right, I'll read this out. Make the following changes. I'm going to leave out technical stuff here, but okay, leave that out. Okay, add 3 types of scores they use under user's profile. They have softcore score, hardcore score, and like some middle score that I'm currently forgetting what they call that. That's sort of like an average of some kind. Anybody remember what they call that? Retro points. Okay. A retro point score is a measurement of rarity and estimated difficulty, derived from points, numbers of achievers, and number of players. So a calculation that they're not telling you exactly how it functions. Maybe just an average or something, but you could see here very small. Can I make that bigger? Yeah. They give you 3 scores. You see I have a score of 865. And this one is the hardcore score, and this one's my soft course mode score. And so let's represent all 3 of those scores. You can kind of see, although you can't really see on my screen, that we represent the hardcore score because at some point, actually, we represented the softcore score, and then at some point, Retro Achievements, I guess, decided to use the data point that we utilized and change that to the hardcore score, just randomly. One day, everybody woke up and said that we're using softcore points. Like, where did all my points go? It went from whatever their points was to 0 because they weren't using hardcore mode. And we're like, I don't know, we didn't do anything. We didn't touch our implementation. But the API data point that we were grabbing just switched what that score was actually pulling. And so now they have 3 scores, which they didn't have before when I think we did the original implementation. So we would represent those 3 scores. Then we would add the ability for achievements to show whether they're a progression achievement, a win condition achievement, or a missable achievement. I guess that means optional achievement. And that was explained to me that games can... There's a certain set of conditions for each game to be considered like beaten, like make it to the end. That makes sense. But some games you don't like make it to the end of certain games. That's like not quite as straightforward. So they've come up with, hey, if you earn all of these achievements, these progression achievements, and then you do the very last achievement, which we're going to call a win condition achievement, you have beaten that game. And so they did all this stuff. I think it takes time for someone, when reading all this, to kind of understand what all this stuff is. I know it did for me. But once you do, it makes sense, right? Focus more, like, how do you beat certain games is subjective. Now, they had to figure out, well, how do you beat a game? Well, maybe you achieve these 5 achievements in this, these 5 achievements, and then now we basically say that you've beaten it, whatever that is. And so, okay, let's do this. Tetris. I don't know. Let's find out. What does it mean to beat Tetris? Is there a way to beat Tetris? I'm not seeing any progress achievements. So here's one achievement right here. And this achievement is said win condition, which basically means if you earn this achievement, you beat the game, Tetris, whatever this version of Tetris is, BPS. And this achievement is clear round 5, stage 9. That's how you beat retro achievement, or beat Tetris from a retro achievement standpoint. At Focusborg, yeah, I heard that. Somebody actually beat Tetris. Or at least, like, got to a point where it ended and then, I don't know, like, crapped out or something. right? That makes sense. So part of what we would do is we would like this win condition badge that they have on this, we would also represent that in LaunchBox so people can understand, oh, here's the progression achievement and this one is the win condition achievement, and give you better feedback how to beat a game according to retro achievements. Right, so that's the next thing we would do. Then we would add badges specifically for retro achievements. And just to be clear, like all this stuff that I'm doing, I have no idea if they have APIs to support any of this yet. So this is just sort of design thoughts. We then now have to go to CBeats and basically, hey, does the retro achievement API do this? Can we do this? What's the performance impacts on all of this stuff? How could we do this? I don't know. We'll figure it out. So maybe some of this stuff might be cut out. But add badges specifically for retro achievements completed status, which is different. They have many different statuses. They've got a softcore beaten status, beating the game in their eyes through the softcore achievements. They've got a hardcore beaten status, which is beating the game in hardcore mode by getting all of the progression and win condition achievements in hardcore mode. Then they've got the mastered softcore achievement of beating a game in softcore mode, or not beating a game, getting all of the softcore mode achievements. And then they've got the mastered hardcore mode, beating getting all of the hardcore mode achievements. And each one is represented by a different icon. I believe all the softcore ones are just like an outline of a circle, and the hardcore ones are like a solid circle of some kind. Yeah, well, there you go. You're softcore, which is fine. Like being able to show this stuff is, I guess, more important here. So we would potentially have a badge that can show you which games you've beaten in either softcore or hardcore mode, and which games you've mastered. Now, they're all like, you can't have both a beaten achievement and a mastered, right? It's you beat it first, and then you master it. Master it in and of itself means that you've already beaten it. So it would be like one achievement, maybe one badge, maybe two badges that show those statuses. Which then, if it's a badge, we potentially could then filter on, which means you can go and you can filter the games that you've mastered. Which then, if it's that, then we could make it so you could create a playlist that could show all of the games that you've mastered. That would then update automatically. And that's what we've written down. That's you can see like a little diagram here, or not diagram, little description that hollow gray circle means beaten softcore, hollow gold circle means completed, full gray circle means beaten in hardcore mode, and full gold circle means mastered in hardcore mode. A little description of all that stuff. Anyway, so that's what we had written down. And you could see that we left out the whole leaderboard thing, because that thing is going to be a beast to tackle. We got to think of like how are we gonna present that? Are we gonna utilize that information in some way? Writing down those passwords is tedious, yeah, in some games. I must say that I am a hardcore mode player. I was a softcore mode player, but for the most part, I am okay with playing a game in the way that the game was meant to be played, to a point for most games. Unless I don't have enough time and I really badly wanted to get through a game and just see it, something like that, then I can use save states. Give me 1 second. I will be right back. Give me 1 minute. Do I have a be right back thing? Yeah, I'll be right back, guys. All right. So, thought of something. So, this was the one hot topic that we had with this whole retro achievement thing. And yeah, hopefully you guys that are into the retro achievements, who's not into retro achievements, who would never use it? Is there anybody here like that? Or are most people in the fence of like, I'm using it, or I haven't used it, but I'm really interested in using it? Anyway, so hot topic. Yeah, everyone's getting a T-shirt, Focus Board, that says "We love retro achievements." I guess that's the wrong T-shirt. I should say "We love LaunchBox." Focus Board, you're not into it, Andrew. You have an account, but you haven't really used it, which means you have the account, but you don't have it linked to LaunchBox. You don't have it set up. Yeah, I beat a game on hardcore mode, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. So you can beat a game in retro achievements, but based off of a retro achievement condition. Do you consider that beating the game? To the point that LaunchBox also has a complete checkbox that you can say that I've completed this game. Would you want you completing a retro achievement beaten status, if you earn that, to automatically adjust your completed status in LaunchBox? Or would you consider them two separate things? Super Star Wars. Yeah, that's a game that you could play that makes you feel like you're less of a gamer. But anyway, would you want retro achievements, whether it be the softcore beaten status or the hardcore beaten status, to then automatically adjust LaunchBox's completed status? And here's a scenario. Let's say you've beaten 5 games on retro achievements in softcore mode, and you download LaunchBox for the first time, you set it up, you import those games, you sign in to retro achievements, and all of a sudden you notice that we've set those 5 games to completed. They're now marked as completed. LaunchBox completed. Without you having to do anything, because we just used the beaten status in retro achievements to deduce that. But then the question is, so let's say you say, sure, yeah, that's a great idea, right, Edie? Would you then want to take, like, what to you means that you've completed a game? Is it softcore completed, or softcore beaten, softcore mastered, hardcore beaten, or hardcore mastered a game? The answer to that could be different depending on who you talk to, right? So some people might not want us to use this completed checkbox for that, or they might want us to use the completed checkbox for a very specific thing that could be different per user. This could be solved by just making this completely optional opt-in. We could just be like, okay, here's a feature. We can do this. We can mark the complete status, but it's off. No one gets it on by default. So now go here, go to options, turn it on, and then there's like a little drop down that determines what you feel is actually completed. Is it softcore mastered? Is it softcore beaten? Whatever. You choose that and we'll follow that. And then you press OK. And then only those people that have found that feature, that option, will do it for. Like a niche of a niche of a niche feature that then we'd have to support. Yeah, right, Edie? That's why some of those things are kind of go down the list until we get a better understanding of like all of the different ways that everyone would want to use something. I am going to go back now, Focusborg, to your earlier request that I haven't read yet. So know how Facebook gives you memories for this year kind of thing every now and then. Can we do something similar? Every now and then, LaunchBox will hit you with the games you played this year with a slideshow and maybe pull something from the playlist for game suggestions, percentages people who played the same games. What do people think about that? Like, this is what I think of when I think of that. like a year in review, right? Of your list. If I can remember. So Steam has something similar like this. Steam Replay 2024. I played 16 games, locked 38 achievements, like a little summary. Here's some games that I played. If anybody hasn't played this Epistory and you're into typing, I thought that was a cute game. Like a breakdown. This is what you played. This is how long you played. Here's the types of games that you played. And let's take a look at these games that you played and when you played them. And you can see I didn't really play many games on Steam. Myth Force was a fun game. So I had written that down somewhere. Man, I can't remember where I did it. Oh, you know where I did it? Probably here. Yeah, so what do people think of this? A LaunchBox year in review. Or month in review, or whatever. Like, could be whatever we want. And I'd written down this. So we're kind of on the same wavelength. And I don't know if you can... Oh man, I can't make this bigger. Where's the... Huh? Okay. Make this smaller. All right. So list these things. This is based off of statistics that we may or may not have. I think we have most of these. The number of games that you played, number of hours and minutes that you've played in LaunchBox, a breakdown of the genres that you played. It could be a spider graph, similar to how Steam does it. A breakdown of the platforms that you played. That also could be a spider graph. That would be interesting. Not just show you the platforms that you played, but like which platform you played the most of. A breakdown of the years of release dates of the games that you've played. So like you played this year, most of your games were from the 80s or something, or from the 90s, or you could see sort of like a breakdown of that. Amount of achievements earned across retro achievements, across your Steam and GOG achievements, which we may or may not actually have. Show top 5 games that you played, percentage of playtime, how many times they played them, stuff like that. When you played them, actually I don't know if we have that stat, to be honest. Number of games that you star rated. And maybe a breakdown of that. Top 10 personally rated games that you've rated yourself over the last year. A breakdown of playtime through date and month, which, to be honest, I don't know. I don't think we have that. Top X amount of games that you earned a high score in with the MAME high score. A breakdown of games played that use a specific type of controller. And then I just wrote X amount of games added with a breakdown of when you added them throughout the year. X amount of games that you edited. I don't think we have that stat, but I put that anyway. And X amount of media that you downloaded in total. I also don't think we have that stat. I feel like we could get that though. So it'd be something like that. That's what I wrote down, specific to. I feel like we're on the same wavelength, Focus Borg, for that kind of thing. And Retro Frog, there you go. You would like stats like that, even though we probably don't have a lot of those. But I tried to keep it into something that we actually had, and probably did not succeed. But yeah, that's what I had written down. All right, cool. So if we did something like that, at least you guys would be interested in seeing that. Then we would want to keep it on like an account. So if you had an account like the game's database account, which we are in the process of with this whole single sign-on thing, we could then rename it to just like a LaunchBox account, and it would. The dream is to just have it hold all things LaunchBox, right? Your license, we could distribute your license that way. We could distribute, have all those stats on there for you, so you wouldn't ever lose these statistics just because you decided to rebuild LaunchBox or whatever down the road. All right, Orion, let's take a look. One feature that you wanted on LaunchBox was the option to hide your name where it shows your license. Some people use their real names when purchasing license. That is true. When they live stream, they might not want that information out there. 100%. So when this is a huge hot topic that we've discussed many times internally and come up with many solutions that require ginormous framework changes to accomplish. At least in the way that we would dream of having it. There was a reason, like you understand the reason why it's there. Right? If you buy your license, it is the DRM friendly way at the time, and we're talking 11 years ago now, that allowed you to have a license without trying to like get in the way with DRM. Oh, the attempt was, right? And so the hope was this would deter people from sharing their license. So that we didn't have to focus on that as a active thing that you had to invest money in. Like all the security stuff and all those sorts of things, and then a constant battle to try and to keep the DRM train going to stop you from doing. The company is heavily against DRM. Share like your license, use it as many times as you personally want. It's a personal license. And so this was before Twitch was a thing, really, before live streaming was a big deal. Now people more and more throughout the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, now that Twitch is so huge, this has become a problem for them. I don't want to see my real name on there. I'm live streaming. I can understand why people don't want that. Doxing, they say doxing, all this stuff. I can understand that, even though, like, I mean, it's your name. People don't like to share their name. We know everybody's name that has ever been a celebrity, and that's a thing. But I feel like I wouldn't want my name to be displayed there and stream if I was heavily trying to stream LaunchBox. It's a problem. The solution was if you're a heavy streamer and if you created videos like you do and you want to show LaunchBox, you can reach out in the short term to our email and we would change your name to your online alias so you could get a license that says Orion's Angel. Right? That was the solution for many years. The dream solution is to make it so we could link your LaunchBox account's username and display that. Yeah, there you go, Focusborg. Eh? You took advantage of that. So the dream is you get your license, it would be there. Your license itself would have your information. Then you would sign into your LaunchBox account and your username would then get displayed, and that's it. And if you adjusted your username on your LaunchBox account, that's the name that would then get displayed in LaunchBox and, less importantly, in Big Box. And in order to accomplish that, we needed a single sign-on. We needed a whole bunch of other stuff to work together to make that a reality. And I think that's still the dream, that's still the goal, to get us there. And hopefully once we're there, that will solve this problem. Until then, if you haven't already, contact support. They can take care of you. Focus board. All right, now your second troubleshooting issue. All right, let's do this. You're having issues adding non-MAME arcade games. For example, Naomi, Thomas Wave, Model 2, etc. They don't end up in your arcade folder. They end up in the standalone in a standalone folder. You want them in an arcade folder, and RetroFrog is giving you a solution that actually happens automatically. Let me show you. Let me get rid of one of these. This one. And let me not play media. Do I have any videos here? I don't. Here. Alright, didn't play. I didn't actually test this. I don't have a star rating on this. Let me switch back. Let me type out. So you notice here that we may still have a problem with this star rating. This one seems to work fine. I targeted it and now it's showing 5 stars when it should be 3 stars. This one should be 2.37 stars, but it's showing 0 stars. If I touch it, it's now gone up to... Oh, it's just like filling up where my mouse was. That's funny. How about if I click on it? And it's showing 5 stars instead of where I was at. Oh, it's kind of doing the same thing, but with a different color. Alright, we'll get that fixed. That's why we test. But the video also seemed to be having a problem. If the video Autoplay is off. Oh, that one worked. That's good. That's a good sign. That is a good sign. I can turn it on, turn it off. Full screen. Ah! Both are going on. I opened it twice. Alright, now they're closed. Just getting through this. Cool. I think the video's fine. Just that star rating's a little loopy. Okay. Much better than it was before. I'll just tell CBeats. I'll get that fixed. This old star rating control. All right, what are we doing? I don't know if you're still there, Ryan. So, CBeats, I can say, whenever, how would you describe this in text? You would say, wherever you mouse over the graphic, the star rating, the graphic takes on that rating. That's basically the problem. All right, so I don't know if you're there, Ryan, but I can go through the process of importing a game. Well, let's just import. What did I delete? Sega Naomi? God, I hope I actually have those. Okay, I do. Here you go. So let's say I put it in the Sega Naomi platform. You could, and this is one thing you could do, is you could say put it in the arcade platform, and then it would put it in the arcade platform. And then they would just be sitting in the arcade. And I guess that's fine. But let's say I do it this way, and it's noticing that I don't have the BIOS file. I do have it somewhere. So I can even showcase getting that file, which is probably in one of these guys. Isn't it? Oh. There it is. I mean, it's in this one and I just didn't wait long enough. Oh yeah, it's saying it's working on it. There it is. Look, and then this says the file's found. The green icon means that the hash was correct and everything is great. This exclamation point means the emulator has indicated this file is required. All right, and the system takes care of the rest. Don't move my files. Don't want to download any media right now or bezels. And we are going to force using MAME metadata, because we know that Sega Naomi is just files from a MAME set. And in this case, because I've curated all these files, which I'm assuming that people have done, when dealing with this stuff, that you don't want us to filter anything, right? You want to import all the clones. You don't want us to filter any of this stuff or create anything. It's very specific. Just read the MAME metadata. Let's take a look. Okay. It found and it's named all of the games, all the files correctly. "165 games, which are going to condense to something much smaller because there's a lot of the same game here. Let's finish that up. All right, done. And there's all the games, which condensed to 100 games. And you can see that it's automatically put it inside of the folder called Arcade. So you could click on Arcade and get all of those games there. Now let's say you did this, but you still wanted just like one place called Arcade that houses all of your arcade games. And say in Big Box, you just wanted it to say Arcade. And that was it. Then you can add a new playlist. And this playlist, you could call it Arcade. Arcade games, let's say. But the nested name, give it whatever name you want. Arcade. Give it a clear logo, video, whatever you want to give it. Give it a path. And in here, you could essentially just say, and there's a number of ways that you could do it. A simple way could just be, Sammy at Thomas Wave. Just name the platforms. I could do Sammy Thomas Wave, contains any value, Sega Model 3, Sega Naomi. So you could do it this way, or you could list them out individually. And there's all of my games. I can tell it to just put it somewhere. Include the playlist in platforms, if you wanted to go that way. So if in platforms, I would have now an arcade games section that listed all of my arcade games from every single arcade platform. Or in the platform categories, you can have this arcade playlist to act as your platform. And you could stick this inside of your arcade category or place it here. You could then remove these ones. So you could just be like, hey, parents, like, don't put my Sammy Thomas platform in the arcade category. Done, it's gone. But move this in here. Not sure why you'd want to do this, but you could say, just put my arcade playlist inside of my arcade category and then remove these platforms from here. So now I've cleaned out the platform categories to only include one section with all of my arcade games. So many different ways that you could do this. You could get rid of the category and just have the arcade in the root and list all of your platforms or things that you want to display, whether it's platforms or playlists, in the root. Just have one layer in platform categories. And then that would then get displayed inside of Big Box the way that you want. Hopefully that answers your question. And Focusborg coming in with the feature requests. That would not actually help you, I guess, but would help a lot of other people that I'm sure you know, right? How about a way to allow changing the default emulator per game? And okay, so let me see what you mean there. So I have this game here. I don't know, let's use Nintendo 64 since we haven't been in here. And I have Banjo-Tooie. And Banjo-Tooie, I want to use not RetroArch for this one, but I want to use, I don't know, let's say Project 64. So I don't have Project 64, but let's use that as an example. Where, I don't know, this is now Project 64. Sure. And I want only this one game to use Project 64. All the other ones to use the other ones. And now you're realizing we already have that. RetroPython. We already have a decent Atomic Wave video up on YouTube. We do, don't we? And it is a good one. If you like certain games that the Atomic Wave created, I think there's a good Metal Slug that is very fun to play on the Atomic Wave. That's a good one to get. Yeah, so one last thing that I want to do outside of this. Let's go back to just the default theme. And I had tested a while back, we included PS Vita support. How many people here use PS Vita, play some PS Vita games using, I guess, the only one emulator that's out there, which is Vita 3K? Not sure how popular that platform is. But they've taken great strides. It's getting to the point where I think it plays, over 1,000 games for a while now. Maybe not the best games or the games that you want to play, but lots of them. And if you sat there and you set up the emulator, so here's Vita 3K. The way that this emulator works is that you have to set up this emulator like you're really using this device, which the way that it works was, a new version. Thank you. No, thank you. Is that you would have to install the games onto its hard drive to play them. So I even have a game that's purple. What does purple mean? Does that mean it's perfect? Or does that mean it doesn't play at all? Maybe it'll tell me. No, it means it's just bootable. That's not good. Anyway, so you load in the games, you install the games, but the games go into like their system, like they're in these folders somewhere. I don't even know where they are. I probably used to. And you go in here and be like, okay, here's a game. NPX S10027. There's your game. And there's the eboot file. Like, you're gonna sit there and be like, well, I don't know where all my games are. I mean, they're here. This is where all my games are. In this list. How would you import this list into LaunchBox? So we developed a way to allow you to, after you set up Vita 3K, you would just set your emulator and then it would just import, right? And then at some point we broke that and no one told us. Just no one. I'm like, does anybody using this? That no one even realized that somehow it broke at some point. I don't even know when. Anyway, so we fixed that. It's no longer broken. So you can see here, if I were to here choose Vita 3K, point it to my Vita 3K application path. I just wanted to prove on stream that as of today, February 6th, 2025, Vita 3K is working in LaunchBox. And at one point I will find this video when it breaks again, which I'm hoping it won't break again. And I will remind myself that as of this date, it was working. Press OK. And I can do one of two things now that the emulator is there. The first thing I can do is restart the program. That's probably what I would recommend people to do. Restart the program, and during startup, it will recognize that during its auto import process, it will recognize the program or the emulators there, find the games, notice that the games are not in your library, and then import them. For time, I'm going to open up the platform section, add the Sony PlayStation Vita platform, which I think is here. There you go. Okay, press OK. It's here somewhere. There it is. And as we wait, you'll see here that it's found it now, because the platform has to exist for this system to work. Now it exists. Go to PlayStation Vita, and we are golden. I'm kind of wondering, this still didn't find it. PlayStation, the Little Big Planet game. Oh wow, is that why? Oh, okay, that's why. Okay, I'll fix that. So you can see here that for some reason the Vita itself calls this game. We get the names directly from PlayStation Vita. And for some reason they called this game Little Big Planet TM PlayStation R Vita. That's the name of the game, which is weird. On the clear logo, they call it Little Big Planet PS Vita. And so what we do is we condition this name to remove this TM and this R. And when that happens, it turns into Little Big Planet PlayStation Vita with no space here. Who knows? This was probably a mistake. They probably meant to put a space here, I'm assuming. And they didn't. And now that's the name of their game. And because of that, because the logo and the box and everything calls it Little Big Planet PS Vita, I'm sure that that's the name on the database. Let's take a look. So if I went to the database and looked up Little Big Planet with the platform of Sony PlayStation Vita. There you go. The main title is Little Big Planet PS Vita, just like on their box. that's not the name that Vita is telling it to be. So I added this little thing, but I mistakenly put a space here. And now I can use this alternate name to get that match in. I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow, but I'm going to edit this. And that should fix the match. This is what it's in on the PlayStation Vita. There you go. I didn't break it, I'm fixing it. There you go. Okay, so this alternate name, just by being here, will help with matching that game profile with this, if anybody imports this game again. And that will update tomorrow. Okay, so, however, we know that Little Big Planet is named PS Vita right now, so I could just do that and get it to match. Yeah, we fixed it. And so this, not only that works, but if you remove a game from your Vita and then you run the scan for removed games, we will identify it and allow you to delete it. If you add a game, you can use the add game feature and we'll add it, or you can it'll just automatically pick it up. If I added a game right now and restarted LaunchBox, it would automatically add that game because we would be part of the checks. And that's it. So now, Focusborg, you can utilize this system again. It should work. Yeah, I don't know when it broke. But we worked a lot on it, and so we just had to like put the pieces, Lego blocks back together to make it work. So much easier, especially if you have like the 1,000 games or whatever. Oh, you're going to tell me another Nokia N-Gage? Who imports the Nokia N-Gage? That's a funny device. And all can't even read this, but it can't be more than 50 games. That looks less than 50. You want to play the Elder Scrolls. Does that sound as bad as I'm thinking it would be? Following the success of the PC version, Elder Scrolls series, Shadowkey mimics most of the hallmarks. Is that true? It was, eh? Oh, there was one other topic of discussion. I can't remember if I brought it up last week. Okay, so this is a good example. See this image? We want people to... Has Dungeons Open World? Wow, actually that's pretty cool. I would actually like that game. What emulator runs this N-Gage? I mean, I'd be happy if it was a RetroArch core. Anyway, back to the topic. So last topic for today, because it's getting late. See, this image says it's a 176 by 208, which I assume is the size of the playfield on that little device, which would make sense because that's what we want. So when you display it, it displays like that. That's pretty tiny. Some people want us to balloon that size up to something larger. There you go, Scarmy. Hopefully you feel a little better. And yeah, last topic. So some people would want us to grow this to a larger size. ECA 2L1. That makes sense for a platform called the N-Gage. Some people want it to just stay this size because they don't want to see an image blown up. They want to see it the way that it was meant to be. And so, supervision. That is something we also did. So I took this image. So this is the size of the image. And if I were to say, let's okay, so this is exactly 3 times the size of that. Which basically means we could potentially scale it up in a way that's pixel perfect, basically, like just keep doubling the size until we reach a size that can't get any bigger for the user screen kind of thing. I don't even think this is a hot topic. Would people be against that? How many people want to just see it the size like on your screen here that it technically was meant to be? I mean, the size isn't, this is a bad example because it's a little tiny device, so it probably was that size when you saw it. But like for the NES and for the Super Nintendo, the pixels were so tiny. So on our screen it would be really tiny like this. But that's not how we viewed it as a kid. It was on our big TV screen. I wonder if people would be against us blowing this image up so that you can see the image but still have it pixel perfect and not blown up and distorted in the way that we currently do it in LaunchBox. So in LaunchBox, we actually do make it larger. So let's say, here's an example. We used to not do this, and there were a lot of people that complained that, like, why am I looking at an image that I can't see? Kind of complained. It's so super tiny. So if I use this as an example, see if I can find this image. Okay, found the image. So in this correctly? Okay, I can. That's the size. And granted, this is a 2K monitor. Okay, so the way that we currently do it is we take that. Oh, that's even the wrong game. It was this game. And we make it that. We just have a constraint, make it this size, this height or width, depending on which you hit first. Or we could say, you know, keep it. So the other one's not pixel perfect. I could take the 160 and I could just keep doubling that. Let's say for my screen, all right, I think I'm almost there. All right, so if I do 120, okay. Keep it the actual size and allow you to zoom in. Yeah, so this would include, so this is what we do in the app is we just zoom it in. We just balloon it up and it turns out like this. It's a little fuzzy. Not pixel perfect, you know. The renderer tries to just fill in the gaps the best it can. This could be for both the web and LaunchBox. Or we could say, okay, keep adding, like keep taking the 160 width and just keep going until the height can't, or 160 height or whatever it was, until it can't get any bigger. And then display that one. And that would then end up looking like this, which is the same image, but would be sharper because we kept the pixel proportions correct. And I think for the most part, people will be fine with that. For the most part, I think. At some point, I'll probably find a reason why we shouldn't do this. But if not, I think it makes sense to do that. And the only thing I can think of is people coming and saying, no, I really wanted to view that image like this. I have a feeling there's nobody out there like that. There definitely are people out there that just want that pixel perfect growth of these images. And so those are the kinds of things that we think of in a week in the life of LaunchBox. So it is already 4 o'clock here, so I'm going to have to head out. But thanks for another good discussion, another week of LaunchBox in the bag, at least for the stream. Tomorrow, actually, I think Josh had missed his Tuesday stream for an emergency, unfortunately. So if you're looking for another LaunchBox stream, it is going to happen tomorrow. I believe it's a different time. You can check the Discord for that time. I believe, so if I'm in Discord here, there's an event tomorrow at 4 p.m. EST, at least my time. Josh will be streaming, and he will be deep diving into something development wise, so that'll be fun to watch. I'll be there. I hope you'll be there, and I'll be back next Thursday. So come back, please come back, because I don't really want to just talk to myself for 3 hours. So thank you so much for joining, guys. And we'll see you guys next time. All right, have a good weekend, everybody.